My name's Daniel. I'm 32, and up until about a month ago, I still thought there might be a version of my family that genuinely cared about me. Not tolerated me, not used me, but actually, truthfully cared. I was wrong. And it took a single dinner, one I hadn't even wanted to attend, for me to finally understand just how deep the rot went. I work in tech, nothing flashy. Not a CEO, not a millionaire. But I'm good at what I do, and I've been careful. I bought my first house at 28, helped my parents get out of debt, and even paid off a chunk of my sister's student loans after her second attempt at college didn't go anywhere. It wasn't because I expected anything in return. Honestly, I just thought that's what family did. You help, you pitch in, you take care of each other. I grew up thinking my mom was this strong, funny, unshakable woman. She could carry 4 grocery bags in each hand. She could negotiate down the price of anything. And she could fry the best chicken you've ever tasted while lecturing you about your posture and asking if you've met someone yet. But somewhere along the line, maybe after Dad left, maybe after my sister moved back in with her kid and no plan, something changed. She got tired, sharper. Not in a clever way. In a bitter, cutting way. Like she'd decided the world owed her something and I was the nearest open wallet. Then there's my sister, Allison. She's 29 and has had more fresh starts than I can count. She tried interior design school, then real estate. Then she was going to make it big on Etsy, but I'm still waiting for her to ship the first thing she ever listed. She moved back home after her boyfriend. Well, her third boyfriend in 2 years got caught stealing from his job. I told her she could stay with me for a few weeks while things cooled down. 2 weeks turned into 4 months. And during those 4 months, my groceries disappeared, my Wi-Fi bill doubled, and my name got dragged into every fight she had with her ex. When I finally asked her to move out, she said, "You're just mad you'll be alone again." I laughed. Then I locked the bedroom door and slept like a rock for the first time in weeks. Anyway, this dinner. It was supposed to be casual, just a family catch-up, as Mom put it. But I knew the moment I pulled up and saw 3 cars I didn't recognize that something was off. I walked in, and there were like 12 people in the dining room. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. My Aunt Ruth from Philly, who only shows up when she's bored or broke. My mom was beaming. My sister rolled her eyes like she'd already had 3 glasses of wine. I greeted everyone, set down the bottle of wine I brought, and barely had time to sit before the backhanded comments started flying like darts. "So," Ruth said, raising her glass, "to the ones who actually do something with their lives." Her eyes flicked between her own daughter, who just got engaged, and my sister, who sat up straighter like she'd accomplished something. Allison smirked. "Not everyone can freeload forever." My cousin chuckled into his napkin. My mom. She just laughed. Laughed. I looked around like someone might object. Maybe Dad would clear his throat and say, "Hey, let's not do that." But of course, he wasn't there. He hadn't been for over a decade, and apparently neither was any shred of decency at that table. I didn't say anything. Just took a sip of water, pulled out my phone, and scrolled to the email I'd read at 8:03 that morning. From the lawyer. Subject line, "Final transfer of ownership, 2419 Fairmont Avenue." See, here's what nobody at that table knew. Mom's house. The one we grew up in. I bought it 5 years ago. It was a quiet deal. Mom was behind on taxes, the bank was sniffing around, and she begged me not to let us lose it. So I did what I always do, stepped in. Paid off everything. Took over the mortgage. Legally, the house became mine. But emotionally, it was still hers. At least that's how she talked about it to everyone else. I didn't press. I figured, if it gave her some dignity, I'd let her pretend. But a few months ago, I found out she'd been trying to take out a second mortgage on it. Using forged documents. Claiming she was the owner. I don't know what she needed the money for. Allison? Gambling? Who knows? All I know is I got a call from my bank asking for clarification on a loan request I never filed. That's when I got the lawyer involved. I looked around the table, phone in hand. My thumb hovered over the email, and I let out a small breath through my nose. Then I said, "Cool. Should I read what the lawyer sent me this morning? Or let you find out when the house changes owners next week?" That was it. That one sentence. And suddenly, everything went quiet. Like, dead quiet. You could hear the clink of a fork hitting porcelain. Ruth blinked like she didn't understand. My sister's face drained of color. Mom tilted her head just slightly, her smile frozen like a glitch in a bad simulation. I didn't say another word, just stared at them. And the silence grew heavier. Thicker. Like smoke. Like fog in a closed room. No one moved. No one laughed. And I waited, just long enough to see who would speak first. It was my sister. Allison squinted at me like she was trying to read a foreign language. What do you mean you got something from a lawyer? What lawyer? I didn't answer her. I turned my gaze to Mom instead. Her smile was gone now, replaced with that tight-lipped expression she used to give me when I asked about things she didn't want to explain, like why she told me we couldn't afford new shoes, but my brother somehow got a new Xbox the next week. She cleared her throat. Daniel, she said carefully, let's not turn this into some scene. We're all here to have a nice dinner. A scene. That's what she called it. A scene. I almost laughed. Not loud, not obnoxiously, just this sharp little breath that escaped my nose. I tucked my phone back into my pocket and leaned back, watching her try to rebuild the illusion of control. She glanced at Ruth, then the others, then finally back at me. You've been under a lot of stress, I know, she added quickly. With your job and everything. I understand if you feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed? I paid for this woman's house. I covered her medical bills when she slipped on the porch 2 winters ago. I gave her my time, my money, my trust. Over and over again. And she was standing there, brushing me off like a child throwing a tantrum in a supermarket. Aunt Ruth, of course, had to insert herself. What's he even talking about? What house? My cousin mumbled. Wait, is this about the mortgage? I stayed quiet. I wanted her to say it. And she finally did. Mom's voice dropped to this low, trembling register, like I was the one who'd blindsided her. Daniel bought the house 5 years ago, she said through gritted teeth. But it's always been my home. And he said I could live here. Live here, I repeated, not raising my voice, not letting anything crack. That was the deal, right? You get to live here. You don't forge my signature to try and pull out a loan. You don't tell everyone you're the owner. You don't lie to a lender, almost tank my credit, and hope I wouldn't find out. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to deny it, but she didn't, because she knew I knew. I had the documents. The rejection letter from the bank, the emails, the forged signature that didn't even match her handwriting. And most importantly, I had the attorney. A real one this time. Not a favor from a friend. Someone with teeth. My sister finally found her voice again. So what? You're just gonna kick Mom out? After everything she's done? That was rich. I looked at Allison with the same expression I'd used to give her when she forgot to pick up her kid from daycare. Everything she's done? I said, like turning the house I bought into a personal ATM? Or letting you live rent-free for a year while mocking me at every turn. She stood up abruptly, hands clenched at her sides. You always think you're better than us. That just because you make money, you get to hold it over our heads. No, I said quietly. I think I get to decide who gets to live in my house without trying to stab me in the back. The room was still dead silent, but now it had changed. It wasn't just awkward anymore, it was cold. Uncomfortable. Like everyone else had finally realized this wasn't just some harmless family squabble. This was war, and the lines had already been drawn. Ruth stood up and muttered something about needing air. My cousin was texting someone under the table. A fork clinked onto a plate. And Mom just sat there, stunned, as if the mask she'd worn for decades was finally starting to slip. Then came the line that pushed it too far. You're not even a real man, my mom whispered, shaking her head. You don't have a wife. No kids. You hide behind your money because that's all you'll ever have. And that was it. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up, slowly, placing both hands on the edge of the table. Not angry, not yelling, just done. My heart wasn't even racing. That was the scary part. I was calm, clear. I used to think I was part of this family, I said. Even when you forgot birthdays, even when you lied to my face, even when you took and never once said thank you. But I'm not family. Not really. I'm just a wallet with a heartbeat. A walking ATM that gets laughed at behind his back. Allison opened her mouth to interrupt, but I cut her off with one hand raised. No, I said. You don't get to talk right now. I pulled my phone back out and tapped a few buttons, turning the screen toward my mom. This is the sale agreement, I told her. As of next week, the house transfers to a new owner. I signed it this morning. Mom stared at the screen like it was written in a language she didn't understand. Her hands trembled. Her mouth opened, then closed again. No, she finally said. You're bluffing. I'm not, I said. And I wasn't. But before she could say another word, before the panic really set in, I tucked my phone away again, stepped back from the table, and glanced at the door. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a dramatic exit. I just looked at each of them one by one, my sister, my aunt, my mother, and let the silence speak for itself. And just as I reached for the door handle, my mother's voice cracked across the room. Daniel, please. I paused, but I didn't turn around. Because she didn't say, I'm sorry. She said, please. And that made all the difference. I didn't turn around. Not at first. Just stood there, my hand on the door, letting the silence stretch again. It was heavy now, not just awkward or cold. It was thick with the kind of tension you only get when the illusion finally shatters. When people realize the person they thought would never leave actually might. Please what? I finally said, without turning around. There was a long pause. I could hear a chair creak behind me, like someone stood up, maybe sat back down again. Then came Mom's voice, smaller now. Not weak, not broken, but softer, almost performative. Don't sell the house. Still, I didn't move. I waited. I know things got out of hand, she said. But this is our home. Your childhood. Your family's history. Our home. Your childhood. As if any of that had ever really belonged to me. Like they hadn't spent the last decade slowly rewriting every part of it to erase me from the picture while still expecting me to fund the frame. Family. I muttered, turning just slightly, enough to glance over my shoulder. Is that what you think this is? She didn't answer. Neither did Allison. She was still standing, arms folded tightly, a pinched look on her face like she wanted to yell something but knew it wouldn't help. And Ruth? She'd stepped outside, I think. Probably already calling her husband to gossip about the scene. I turned fully now, walking back just a few steps into the dining room. Not to stay, not to sit, but to make sure they understood exactly what was happening. You forged my name, I said slowly, my voice clear. You went behind my back and tried to borrow against a property you don't even own. And you didn't do it out of desperation. You did it because you thought I was too stupid or too loyal to notice. It wasn't like that, Mom said. I was going to pay it back. With what? I asked, eyebrows raised. Your retirement? Allison's Etsy career? Allison flinched at that, but said nothing. I shook my head, taking one more step forward. You laughed when they mocked me. You sat there and said nothing. After everything I've done, everything I've given, you couldn't even muster the decency to shut down a cheap insult. Daniel, she said, suddenly snapping out of whatever guilt fog she was trying to project. We're still your family. Don't forget that. I leaned against the edge of the wall near the entryway, arms crossed. That's the thing. You've made it very clear what family means to you. And it's not love. It's leverage. My sister finally cut in again, her voice sharp. So what's the plan, huh? You just throw us out? Let strangers live in our home. Our, I repeated, scoffing. Funny, I don't recall seeing either of your names on the title. Don't be like this, she said. You're doing this out of spite. That made me laugh. Not loudly, but genuinely. Spite. I said. No. Spite would have been selling this place the first time you called me a parasite with a paycheck. Or the time Mom told me I wasn't a real man because I didn't have a family of my own. I didn't mean that, Mom said quickly. It was the wine. I was just upset. You meant it, I said flatly. You all mean everything you say. You just don't like it when I finally listen. That shut them up. I walked into the living room and looked around at all the familiar things. The stained coffee table, the dusty fireplace that hadn't worked in years, the family photos that had slowly pushed me further to the edge of the frame. I found one on a nearby shelf. A picture of me at age 10, gap-toothed, grinning, arms around both Mom and Allison. I remembered that day. I remembered the ice cream afterward. I remembered the warmth. I also remembered asking, years later, what happened to Dad's old tools and being told, oh, we gave those to Jason. You didn't really use them. Jason, the neighbor's kid, the one they still call when they need help fixing something. I put the photo back down gently and turned to leave again. But just as I reached the front door this time, a new voice spoke up. It was Liam, Allison's son, my nephew. He'd been upstairs the whole time, playing games or watching cartoons. Something innocent, something far from this chaos. He stood halfway down the steps now, wearing pajamas and rubbing his eyes. Uncle Daniel, he said, are you mad? I froze. Everything in me went quiet for a second. He looked so small, so confused. And for a brief, painful moment, I felt that old pull again, that instinct to protect, to shield him from the grown-up mess, to clean up after the adults who never quite figured out how to act like them. "I'm not mad at you," I said softly. "I just have to go." "Are you coming back?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to say, because I didn't know if I would, or if I even could. So I just smiled at him, a small, sad smile, and said, "We'll talk soon, okay?" And with that, I opened the door and stepped out into the night air. Crisp, quiet, free. I stood on the porch for a second, breathing it in. The weight of the dinner, the insults, the years, it all sat on my chest like wet concrete. But under it was relief. I started walking toward my car, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes. And just as I reached the driver's side door, my phone buzzed. One new message. From my lawyer. FYI, they've called 3 times this evening asking about reversing the sale. I haven't responded. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. I stood there under the streetlight, phone in hand, engine off, the keys in my palm. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because they still hadn't heard what I was going to do next. And this time, I was going to make sure they felt it. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and sat in silence with the phone still in my hand. My lawyer's message glared back at me from the screen like it was daring me to say the word. No. No to reversing the sale. No to fixing things one last time. No to pretending any of this had ever been normal. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I turned off the screen and stared out the windshield. The porch light flickered faintly in the distance behind me, casting the familiar outline of the house, my house, onto the gravel and hedges. I thought about everything that had happened in there. Birthdays, holidays, the time I stayed up all night in high school trying to glue a history project back together after my sister spilled juice all over it. I remembered sitting on that couch when Dad left. I remembered helping paint the living room after Mom swore she was starting fresh. So many memories. But memories don't pay for betrayal. I drove off slowly. No screeching tires, no cinematic exit. Just a quiet, steady pull into the night. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt, if I'm being honest. I was done. And that kind of peace, it doesn't explode. It settles. Quietly, completely. And when it does, it changes everything. The next morning, I sent a brief email to my lawyer. Proceed as discussed. Do not respond to further calls. Let the sale go through. He confirmed within minutes. That week was quieter than I expected. No calls from Mom. No angry texts from Allison. Not even a guilt-tripping Facebook post from Aunt Ruth, which, honestly, shocked me. I thought maybe they were planning something, preparing for some grand emotional ambush, maybe even reaching out to distant relatives to try and shame me into reversing course. But instead, silence. I found out why on Thursday. A delivery guy rang my doorbell. He handed me a large envelope marked certified copy, final recording. Inside was the paperwork. The title transfer had officially gone through. The house on Fairmont Avenue no longer belonged to me. I wasn't the landlord. I wasn't the emergency contact. I wasn't even listed as a past resident. It was over. The buyers were a retired couple from Wisconsin who wanted to move closer to their daughter. They'd paid in cash. Fast closing. No haggling. The moment the sale finalized, they'd be given the keys. Move-in date, Saturday at noon. So Friday, I drove by the house one last time. The driveway was crowded. Mom's car, Allison's beat-up sedan, even a rental truck. I guess the silence all week had been them scrambling, packing up their things, figuring out what to take and what to leave. I didn't get out of the car, just watched for a few minutes from across the street. I could see Liam helping carry out boxes. He dropped one, and my sister snapped at him. I saw Mom sitting on the porch steps, rubbing her temples. She looked tired, defeated. For a moment, a small, dangerous moment, I felt that old tug again. That soft whisper that said, "You could still fix this. Walk over. Say something. Offer a spare room." But that voice, it wasn't mine anymore. It was the voice they put in my head. The voice that told me my worth was based on how useful I was to everyone else. The one that told me being the bigger person meant always being the one who paid, who forgave, who showed up. So I turned the car around, drove home, and blocked every number in my phone that shared my blood. That night, just after midnight, I got one last email. From Mom. It was short. No greeting. No sign-off. Just 3 sentences. "You really went through with it. I hope you're happy. You've broken this family." I read it twice. Then again. Then I wrote back. "I didn't break anything. I just stopped holding it together. I hit send, then archived the thread. Saturday came. I didn't go near Fairmont. I didn't need to. The buyers took possession at noon. I received confirmation of the wire transfer that afternoon. The funds cleared instantly. I looked at the amount on the screen and felt nothing. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was never about the money. The real payoff was something no bank could transfer: clarity. In the days that followed, people started to find out. Distant cousins, an old family friend, even a childhood neighbor who emailed me to ask if everything was okay. Apparently, Mom had told people I'd sold the house out of greed, that I'd blindsided her, that I'd left her homeless. But they didn't know the whole story. They didn't know about the fake loan applications, the passive insults, the decades of being treated like an emergency fund with a pulse. And I didn't feel the need to explain it. Not anymore. I was done explaining myself to people who only showed up to take sides when it benefited them. A few weeks later, I ran into Liam at a bookstore. I was in the history section. He was in the comic books. He spotted me first and walked over hesitantly, eyes wide. "Uncle Daniel?" I smiled. "Hey, kiddo." He looked up at me, holding a graphic novel under one arm. "Mom said we can't talk to you anymore." I nodded. I figured she might say that. But he looked down at his shoes. "I wanted to say thank you. For before." "For what?" I asked gently. "For letting us live there. For a long time." I felt my throat tighten. I knelt down to his level. "You didn't do anything wrong, Liam," I said. "You know that, right?" He nodded slowly. "If you ever need anything," I added, "and I mean need, not just want, you can find me." "Okay." He gave a small smile, then hugged me, quick and tight, like he wasn't sure if it was allowed. I let him go. He ran back to his mom, who was already scowling from 2 aisles away. I didn't flinch, didn't wave, didn't try to fix it. Because that's the thing about families like mine. They only value what they think belongs to them. And once you remind them that you're your own person, that your money, your time, your love isn't just a resource they're entitled to, they call it betrayal. But it's not betrayal. It's survival. Since then, I've been good. I moved to a new place. Smaller, cozier. Just mine. No shared walls. No shared obligations. I started therapy. Traveled a bit. Spent a weekend camping off-grid with a couple of coworkers who don't know anything about my past and didn't ask. It was quiet. Beautiful. Sometimes, I still think about that night at the dinner table. How it all unraveled in a single sentence. How long it really took to get there. And how, somehow, it was exactly what I needed. Let them say what they want. Let them spin their version. I've got my own story now. And this time, I'm the only one writing it.